All right. So for this time that we have together, we're really excited to share information about our program with you. We're going to start with introductions. We're going to give some information about the profession. Some of you may be very familiar with what school psychology is, and some of you may still be learning. We're going to just do a general overview of training programs, what to be looking for, not only with UAlbany, but any program that you're applying to from our perspective. We'll go over our programs here, careers and credentials that you can acquire when you go through our program, an overview of the mission and training components of our programs. This is something that several folks asked in the questions, why UAlbany? We'll go over from our seat why we think our program stands out amongst others. Then we're just going to do some elements that are particular to your preparation for applying to graduate school in general, applying to our programs, generally a little bit about applications, and then some question and answers. Okay. So I will start us off. My name is Callan Kostelnik. We go by first names in this program. So folks in the program just call me Callan. I'm assistant clinical professor, and I'm also division director. I direct field training and teach 2 of those supervision courses for practicum and internship. And I also teach courses in social psychology. I've taught psychotherapy. In the fall, I'm going to teach social emotional assessment. So, Dave.
Hi, everybody. We're glad you're here with us today for this session. My name is Dave Miller. I'm a professor of school psychology here. I teach courses in Introduction to School Psychology, Behavioral Consultation and Intervention, Developmental Psychopathology, and Prevention and Health Promotion. And I also do research primarily in the areas of issues related to school-based suicide prevention and child and adolescent internalized and behavior problems. So welcome.
Ben?
I can go next. I'm Ben Solomon. I'm an associate professor here in the program. What I teach varies, but the past few years it's been academic assessment and academic intervention. And those also happen to be my research areas. Ways to assess student academic skills, and then use that data to design thoughtful intervention to improve their literacy and math outcomes.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Andrew Pecci. I'm a lecturer in this program. The courses that I teach tend to fall in the counseling realm. I teach psychotherapy, group counseling, crisis intervention, and I also work a lot with Callan on the clinical side of things and oversee the PsyD internships and field placements.
Okay. Thank you. So, given the size of our group, we're hoping in chat that folks can just introduce yourself, put your college, university that you're either attending or attended. And if you do feel comfortable, you can turn your cameras on. We'd love to interact with you in that way. But if you also feel more comfortable with that off at this time, that's certainly okay by us. But we just want to get a sense of where folks are coming from. Shelby from Stony Brook, thanks for joining us. Georgia, Sienna. We know Sienna well. Miranda, Sienna, great, Sienna, excellent.
A lot of Sienna.
Yeah, great, love that. Chloe, Sienna, Vermont, great. Okay, Pace. Great. Thank you so much really exciting to see folks from local and a little bit further. And we're very happy to have you here. So thank you. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about what is a school psychologist, and we also are going to give a website that will help you if you have not been familiar with it already to learn more about the profession. But really, a school psychologist in a gist is just a psychological practitioner whose purpose is to bring that psychological perspective into the school to help different stakeholders serve the clients, which are the kiddos, the students in the school, with issues related to social, emotional, academic, learning, mental health. So really, we're uniquely qualified professionals and members of school teams. And what we do is we help children to learn, we help teachers to teach, and we bridge between the education and the psychological theory and practice. So what do school psychologists do? It depends. And that's a lot of the exciting part of the field, is that the role looks very different from school to school, from, practice to practice. And there's a lot of different things that you will be trained to do as a school psychologist. So several different pieces, one being consultation and collaboration. So there's a lot of work that school psychologists do to be effective in helping teachers to be most effective in their classrooms. And that means working with them to understand issues that are going on and collaborating to create solutions based on the evidence-based practice and literature. School psychologists are big into implementing evidence-based interventions. So that is across academics and social emotional aspects. And there is a process by which school psychologists really hone in and identify a skill or target area and then match a specific intervention in order to help the student to achieve a certain goal, along with that being progress monitoring and data collection to make sure the goal is being met. Assessments. So school psychologists conduct assessments in a lot of different ways. One more traditional is to do an assessment for special education. So that would be something when you're doing standardized assessments and you're sitting down with the kiddo and going through a battery of assessments and writing up a psychological report to share with the team to make decisions. School psychologists also do more specialized assessments that have to do with the curriculum and progress monitor or benchmark to be able to make critical decisions about what students need in the school. And then lastly, research and program evaluation. School psychologists are in a unique place to help with understanding the school needs on a more systemic way and looking at research development, but also at different programs that would be helpful to target the needs of the school, and then making sure those programs are having the impact that is desired. So who do we work with? So I mentioned teachers. Teachers are one of the key stakeholders, and they have a tough job. And are really struggle to get everyone's needs met. And so as much support as we could provide teachers to have their practices being as effective as possible. So there's a lot of collaboration and support there. Of course, school psychologists work directly with students in several different capacities, whether that's counseling, assessment, intervention, lots of ways to support students directly and then indirectly through some of those system level, deciding what the student needs and helping the team to help the student through consultation and collaboration. Work a lot with administrators. So administrators are making decisions and look to school psychologists to make a lot of those, and looking at the data and looking at more systemic issues. So that is certainly a key stakeholder. We also collaborate with families. Families know the most about about the students. And so it's important to maintain those relationships in order to best serve students as they're navigating the school system. Community and agency staff. So we'll talk a little bit about, the PsyD versus CAS and also different areas of practice in the next slide. So school psychologists certainly collaborate with the community agency staff in terms of reach out, but also as a professional licensed psychologist, there's the option to work in an agency setting, and we'll go over that in the next slide. And then policymakers, school psychologists are really change agents. So there's a lot of work both at the state and national level to make policy change and to do that through advocacy. So there's a big piece of what school psychologists do that is talking about bigger change across those local, state, and national platforms. Okay, so where are we employed? At the CIS level, school psychologists are certified to be practitioners in schools. We also have a doctoral program, and we'll go over the difference there, but at the doctoral level, you're trained and you're able to become a licensed psychologist, and that opens doors for work in agencies, hospitals, university settings, private practice, and government entities. Okay, so this is a website, and at the end of the presentation, I will put the PowerPoint slides in chat just to make sure we're able to get everyone. So you'll have all of this. But if you have not already gone to this website, the National Association of School Psychologists, or NASP website, this is our national association. And so this website has a ton of information, and there's a whole section on what is a school psychologist, what does a school psychologist do, and talking if there's anything that I'm saying that you're like, that doesn't really make sense to me right now. This is a place where it really breaks down what a school psychologist does and areas of practice. So I really recommend it, if you have not already, to check that website out. Okay, so overview. One thing that I'm sure you're thinking about is, okay, if I'm a school psychologist and I'm trained in that profession, what is the job outlook? So we're happy to say it's really good. Number 2 best jobs in social services, number 44 in the top 100 best jobs. Unemployment rate is very low, and that is projected to be through at least 2026 and likely much longer. So the long and short of it is job outlook is strong for school psychology. Salary, this was taken from 2018, where the median salary was right around $73,000. It ranges widely due to geography. So there are some differences there, but looking at the median gives you a good sense of where we're hovering around. School psychologists generally get paid better than clinical and counseling psychologists. So that is also, something to consider when you're putting your resources into a degree. How is that going to yield at the end of things? So we did want to provide that information. Okay, so what is required to be a school psychologist? So a lot of this is we're just giving an overview for, this is not only for our program, but for applying to school psychology programs in general, because we do want you to just get as much information as you can to make sure it's the right path for you. So there are 2 different levels of school psychology practice. There's a postmaster's, and there are different degree titles for that, but they are all masters plus a certain amount, which is typically 30 credits. So postmaster's, certificate of advanced study, that's what our program certification is, or certificate is, I should say, is the certificate of advanced study. There's also the education specialist, which you may see with some programs, and the certificate of advanced graduate study is also a degree that some programs use, but they all allow one to practice as a school psychologist and get certified in that designated state. Doctoral degree is the other level. So we are a PsyD program. There are also PhD programs, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means in terms of difference. But that is another level at which one can practice. You would still get, for example, in our program, the certificate of advanced study, and then you would go on to get your doctorate. And we'll talk about what that means in terms of levels of practice. But most school psychologists, I think it's around 75%, are practicing at the postmaster's level. Okay, so overview, our graduate training includes foundational training components, because like we talked about, going back to what is a school psychologist, you're really bringing in sound psychological theory and foundational work from education and from psychology. So we provide coursework and information and study related to those training areas. So psychological theory, so we have foundational classes in, for example, advanced developmental psychology, social psychology, educational theory. So we have an educational foundations requirement, for example, school psychology skills. So this is where the majority of the coursework is in terms of learning, assessment, consultation, collaboration, intervention, and then honing and research skills. And those are very practical and practically oriented courses. We also have a series of supervised field experiences, and that starts in the second year and continues throughout the rest of the program in a hierarchical manner where the number of hours increase over the years and culminates in a full-time internship. And then interpersonal and professional relations, which is a critical component to being an effective school psychologist. And that is something practiced in terms of how you engage in a professional manner, and certainly impacts the different areas of school psychology practice in terms of assessment through research. So we give a lot of feedback on that and support in that area. I think it's been.
Yeah, it's my turn, I think.
Oh, Dave.
So Callan was telling about school psychologists in general, their training, and that there's training levels. We have a CAS program, and as Callan mentioned, that's 2 years of coursework plus a year of internship, and there's also doctoral programs. When you're reviewing training programs, there's a couple suggestions we might have. One is to look at APA's, the American Psychological Association's graduate study in psychology. Another way too, really an easier way, is to look at APA's listing of accredited doctoral programs. If you get on if you just Google American Psychological Association accredited doctoral programs, you'll very quickly and easily find a list of all accredited doctoral programs in the country, alphabetically by state, in clinical counseling and school psychology. NASP, the National Association of School Psychologists, also lists training programs in school psychology. And they list their programs that have been accredited as well. And that's something as Callan mentioned, you should definitely look at. Accreditation is important. It's our program, for example, and we'll be talking about this shortly. We have our doctoral program is accredited by APA, and our CAS program is accredited by NASP. So every graduate of our program, whether you be in the CAS program or the doctoral program, is from a nationally accredited program. What does accreditation mean? It essentially means that the program has been reviewed very carefully. The review process is intensive. You have to apply for it. APA, for example, includes site visitations. interviews of faculty and students, looking at files, looking at the program over several days. It's a highly intensive process. And we have accreditation for both NASP and APA. And by the way, those were accredited well into for the next several years. And we've been continuously accredited ever since we've gone up for those. Some programs in school psychology, both the doctoral level and the CS level, are not accredited. That doesn't mean they're not quality programs, but it should raise a red flag to you as to why they're not accredited. And that would be a good question to ask if you find that out. Another thing we recommend that you look at when you're reviewing training programs is the training philosophy of the program. And the best way to find this out, the initial way, I guess, is to go to the program's website. Our program has a website, as do other programs. And on there, you should find some information related to what's the training philosophy? What are the underlying principles of the training program? What is the program value? What is their orientation in terms of training? That'll give you a lot of information about the program's goals, objectives, aspirations. It'll also include things like what is the emphasis on research and practice? For example, you're probably familiar at the undergraduate level with the scientist practitioner model, using science to guide practice. And there's also what's called the model we have, which is the practitioner scholar model. Both of these models are talking about using science to inform practice, but there's some subtle distinctions between them. In many scientist practitioner programs, they may be primarily training scientists who want to go into academic careers, where practitioner scholar models may be more practitioner oriented. You also want to look at the mission of the program, right? What is the vision the program has for training its students? What are the core values of the program? What are the goals and objectives? These things all collectively set the direction of the program. They tell you what the program sees as important in terms of its training and its model of service delivery. And it points to priorities in the program. That should be made very clear on any program's website. And you can get additional information about that by talking with members of the faculty. If you interview for a particular position, you can ask questions about that. But a lot of that information, I know it is for us, is readily available on the website, where we say very clearly what we value, why we value it, and what our training model is. Now we want to talk a little bit about, and we've mentioned this a little bit before already, but we want to get a little bit more detail about what are the school psychology programs available at our program at UAlbany. Well, as I mentioned, and Callan mentioned, we have two. We offer a Doctor of Psychology degree, that's a PsyD, and we also offer a Certificate of Advanced Study degree, and that's a CAS. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about both of those. The CAS program, as I mentioned, is accredited by NASP. It's a 3-year program. Essentially, that means 2 years of coursework. During your second year, you have practicum experiences out in the public schools 2 days a week. The third year is a full-time internship in a school district. We have a great partnership with many area school districts. We place students within about a 50-mile radius of the UAlbany campus. We have locations in urban areas. We have locations in suburban areas. We have locations in rural areas. If you're familiar with the Capital Region at all, you know that it's an area that has 3 medium-sized cities, Troy, Albany, and Schenectady, as well as surrounding suburbs, and beyond that, rural areas. We've had good relationships with many of those districts. We've been partners with them for many years, and we create new partnerships over time, largely through Callan's hard work. And we've also been, and this makes us unusual in terms of school psychology programs, not only in the state of New York, but across the nation. And that is that historically, we've been able to pay our students when they during their internship year. In other programs, you may or may not get paid. You have to work it out. In our program, we supply the internship for you, and that historically has been paid. I say historically because we've been able to do that year after year. But I don't have a crystal ball what it's going to be like 3 years from now, but we fully anticipate that will continue. We have longstanding relationships with school districts who value our students and are willing to pay for them to be there. In the 3-year CAS program, in addition to earning the Certificate of Advanced Study after you complete your internship in the 3rd year, along the way, you also earn an MS, Master's of Science in Educational Psychology, including a master's research project that you take as part of a class. And you earn the CAS in the August of your 3rd year. That is the August of after completing your full-time internship. If you've completed all required credits, you've completed the internship, including successful completion of a portfolio. We ask all of our students to complete a portfolio where they give us samples of their the work that they've done, an assessment and intervention. Not only does that show us the skills that our school psychology students have accrued over time, but it also can be used as an excellent selling point in talking to potential districts to hire them about, hey, here's some practical skills that I have, here's some things that I've done. School psychology CAS students are also required to pass the comprehensive exam. The comprehensive exam we use is the Praxis exam, so-called Praxis exam. That's a standardized test created by the National Association of School Psychologists. This also entitles you to be eligible to become a nationally certified school psychologist. National certification is a bit of a misnomer. It doesn't mean you're nationally certified in all 50 states. It means that you are eligible to, that you've met a certain standard of quality as a school psychologist. You've met a national standard. Graduates of our program are automatically certified as school psychologists in the state of New York, and they've been easily transferable to other states. We've never had a problem with students who want to go to a different state. We also have a PsyD program, a Doctor of Psychology program that is accredited by APA. This is a 5-year program. That would be 4 years of coursework. Within that 4 years of coursework, you have more intensive field experiences as time went by, and then a 5th year internship. Many of our students who choose, some of our students at least, choose to do APA accredited internships. Those students who want to do that have been successful 100% of the time. Students who prefer to stay locally, we have an internship consortium set up for you so that you can be slotted into that, and that's a paid internship as well. In that 5-year program, just like the CAS, you would earn your MS in educational psychology along the way. You'd also earn a Certificate of Advanced Study degree in school psychology. So a graduate of the PsyD program is not only graduating from an APA accredited program, you're also graduating from a NASP accredited program because you get the CAS along the way. You complete the PsyD after you've completed all required credits. That would include all your field work, coursework, the portfolio in your 3rd year, and the full-time internship in your 5th year. You have to pass the comprehensive exams. Part 1 of the comprehensive exam I described earlier, it's the Praxis exam given by NASP. Part 2 is a series of questions that we ask students in 7 different domains. It's take home, and they're given those questions in advance, and they have several weeks in which to complete them. And the last is successfully defending and depositing a dissertation. And we have a wide range of acceptable topics and acceptable methodologies to do dissertations. I think that's it for me.
Okay, I think I'm up next. So, all right. So for PsyDs, PsyD students within our program are eligible for certification within New York and other states. They're also eligible for NCSP, which Dave went over, and also eligible for licensure as psychologists in New York. Our CAS students are eligible for certification as school psychologists in New York and other states, and also, as we discussed before, pick up that NCSP, which makes them sort of eligible for makes it very easy for them to get to get accredited in various states to practice. So as far as the careers of recent UAlbany graduates, the PsyDs have gone on to do a variety of different things, including work in public and private schools. Because PsyD students are eligible for licensure, and many do proceed to get that license, they can hang a shingle and open up a private practice or work in private practice. I believe actually, Andrew, right? You were in you did a lot of private practice work. Yep. And some do that full time and some do that part time to complement their work in schools or in other settings. That's the nice thing about getting that license, is you can sort of use it fully or partially. It just comes in use in a lot of different ways. Some of our students go off into academia. For example, becoming university or college professors, and sometimes they become psychologists in other settings. The possibilities are pretty extensive. You could work for a hospital, you could work for a testing company, you could work for a BOCES. There's lots of different ways to use that degree. The CASs are pretty much restricted to work within public schools. Our CASs understand that that's why they come in. They want to be school psychologists whose primary work is within one or multiple schools within a public school district. So our mission within this program is to prepare lifelong learners who engage in reflective practice, integrate theory, research, and practice, develop human potential in our clients, and respect individual and cultural diversity. And we prepare professionals who are committed to that practitioner-scholar model of training that was discussed previously. Again, where we use, we don't follow the research practitioner model, in that, we don't see, a neat line between your role as a researcher and practitioner. We see your job as using research to inform practice. The use of evidence-based practices, which we take pretty seriously here. Your professors follow the peer review literature and contribute to it. And we only teach you guys stuff that has been shown to work, via rigorous evidence. And that sounds common sense, but it's not. In some programs that are more theoretical or more tied to old practices, they just, they disregard sometimes contemporary practice to the detriment of you and your clients. We follow the research here and adjust as needed to make sure you're learning cutting edge skills. And we promote skillful and ethical behavior in the provision of psychological services to children, youth, and families. So, what are some basic premises of how we operate here? We place a primary emphasis on schools, and that's pretty important, although it may sound obvious, school psychology, right? Sometimes in school psychology programs, they put an emphasis on work that is seemingly sort of private practice focused or hospital focused. Here you're going to learn how to operate within many settings, and they're all interesting, but your primary emphasis is on how to work with students within the school context. And you're going to learn that really is an acquired skill. Schools are very complex environments. Learning how to, as we discussed before, in terms of who you would consult with, learning how to not just directly work with the student, but how to promote best outcomes for that student in relation to the work of all of the teachers and the specialists and administration, and then also how to promote prevention. It now comes through school-wide or district-wide practices and initiatives, how to understand the ecosystems of schools and how to navigate them to get what you need for students. That's really complicated. And it's why sometimes clinical or counseling psychologists that sort of walk into school sometimes struggle because sometimes they take that for granted. So we place a primary emphasis on understanding school systems. You have guaranteed placements here, as was discussed previously in some schools, in some programs. It may be the case that you're sort of left to your own to find your placements. You have to do them. It's a requirement of NASP and APA, but you have to find them on your own, then report back. Here, it's taken care of. We promise you high quality placements every year you're here. You get a diversity of training and experiences. We're going to rotate you through, for example, elementary, middle, and high schools, or suburban and urban. We minimize student vulnerability. We protect you. We supervise you. We know your supervisors. Oftentimes, they're graduates of our program. We're in constant communication with them. We monitor situations where you may be taken advantage of. Not that they happen very often. And all that really does make a huge difference. In programs where that's not the case, so a lot of weird stuff can emerge. So here we have really a great systems of checks and balances and maintain really great relationships with our outstanding site supervisors. And this is a non-competition collaboration program where we don't pit students against each other like you might hear about like in law school. We don't pick out the top students and give them the top placements. We emphasize collaboration to graduate, and we really work with each and every one of you to maximize your potential. So we have a couple different training components here that organize how we do business. That includes obviously the academic component, which includes your traditional coursework, your clinical component, which is your field training, which I just described, research. And like I said, this is a practitioner scholar program, but it's still an R1 university. And you're still a faculty that appreciate and often do research. And within a school of education that's well known for their research output. So for PsyDs, they are integrated into research lines, and for our CASs, they're encouraged to participate as they want. And also the interpersonal and professional, which is us sort of coaching you outside of these other components and how to work and navigate and collaborate with people both inside the university and in your field placements. And you get feedback on every one of those components. So why UAlbany? I think this is this where I hand the baton?
I think we got a couple more here.
Oh, sorry. There's two. I think there's two why UAlbany slides. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll keep going. So why UAlbany? There's a couple reasons we're proud of our program, and we think it should be, a serious consideration for those considering school psychology. One, we're the highest ranked program in New York State based on a number of indicators. And we're also the highest ranked PsyD program based on those same indicators nationally. So we're well recognized. Our School of Education is well recognized. And the program itself is nationally recognized for the research we conduct and the quality of the training we provide. And all your faculty are trained as school psychologists, and that's something you can look for when you're looking at other programs, by the way. You might go onto a program website and you look at their faculty and you go, okay, they have one person trained as a school psychologist, but he's trained as a clinical psychologist. And this person actually has a PhD in special education, and this person actually isn't even core faculty. They're an adjunct that hops in and out. So you look at the total faculty and you're not getting much expertise in school psychology. What you're staring at right now is a panel of thoroughbred school psychologists. Each of your faculty were trained 100% as school psychologists. That's what our degrees are in. And again, it sounds silly that I have to emphasize this, but it's true, and it's not always the case. All your faculty are also visible at local, state, and national levels. We're well regarded individually as faculty, both within state and nationally. We've held or currently hold leadership positions within practice organizations. So we'd like to think we're well respected. We're a long-standing program. We've been around since the mid-1960s. School psychology is a young field. Psychology is still a young field, right? We didn't really start, organizing and coming together until sort of the early mid-20th century. And school psychology came after, well after that. We used to be a tag-along specialization. So we are one of the oldest continuous programs in the United States. And then the ranking of UAlbany generally in the School of Education amongst all programs is very high. Where the U of Albany is, I think was most recently ranked as of 2018. This should be updated. I forget whether we've gone up or down. I think we've remained pretty stable actually. 70th amongst national universities, and the School of Education has been recently ranked 64th among schools of education, which amongst the hundreds out there is pretty good. We're also a financially stable university. These are difficult times, and unfortunately, a lot of colleges and universities have, frankly, just straight up gone under, closed programs, or if they haven't closed programs, they've had to shutter services. And reduce faculty and other things that would compromise the quality of your training. That hasn't happened at UAlbany. We've weathered it under good leadership, and we remain, confident that that we're not going to have sudden program closures, or we're going to have to close our library or something silly like that. And again, all things you can check too as you consider programs, as you can look at the history of these programs and what's come out in the news. All right, so we promote the use of evidence-based practices, which I've explained. And again, I know that sounds silly, like, well, of course you do, but some programs don't, depending on their theoretical, orientation. We're one of the most selective but least expensive school psych programs in this area. Because this is a state institution, our tuition is dictated by the state, and that keeps it very low. Granted, I understand it's still high. I don't want to. I understand tuition in any respect is a big decision, and it's a lot. But amongst all the different programs that house school psychology programs, we have one of the lowest tuitions because we are a state institution. And again, even though we are a state institution, that doesn't mean our program is very large or you get lost in the weeds. We're a very small, intimate program that offers a lot of individualized training within a large institution that offers a ton of resources. And that very often is an ideal training situation, as opposed to, a program within a very small institution that may sound, really hospitable, but that's not always the case. We have, as I've stated several times already, we have a really good reputation within the region. We have faculty with expertise in diverse areas. As Dave was saying before, as everyone has already stated their specialty. And that's great because it allows you to wonder if you're not entirely sure what you want to focus on. We have students who sometimes do research with me and then move on to Dave. You may find interest in multiple areas. So you get, great training from a broad swath of experts. Expertise in academic assessment, counseling, internalizing disorders, externalizing disorders, consultation. We really cover the gamut, and that allows you to be well-rounded as you go to enter schools. As I've stated before, we have We have field placements in different demographic areas. So again, you get a well-rounded education. And we also have a thriving student association, SASPA. And they do social events, and they also do professional development for students. And they also serve as a bridge really between the faculty and the students. And, you know, and make sure everyone feels comfortable, that everyone's voice is heard, and that, you know, and that we really sort of, you know, promote a community-based approach to training. We have a long history of paid internships for students in the CAS and PsyD programs. As was stated before, that's not always the case, you know, especially these days, because a lot of budgets within colleges and universities and within schools, unfortunately, are pretty tight. But for all our students, we provide paid internships, and we guarantee that. That's not something I had when I went through my PhD. Students present at state and national conferences and co-author publications with faculty. Again, you know, that's not something everyone does. That's more if they're interested. But for a lot of students, that's very exciting. You know, actually in the past year, I've had 2 or 3 publications come out. I've had student authors on them in top journals, and that's just exciting for them to see their name, you know, in the lights. And I've stated before, we're a small collegial program that fosters cooperation, respect, and community, even though we operate within a big university. And we have 100% job placements of graduates. In fact, oftentimes we get requests from schools or districts even before our students have graduated. You know, we get calls all the time. Hey, do you have anyone that's going to graduate soon? So people just get snapped up left, right, and center, both within state and often outside of state too. All right, now I think I'm done.
You're off the clock. So let's talk a little bit about preparation in undergrad. You know, as you are, most of you are working through. I think I saw a master's program in psychology in there. In terms of the undergrad preparation or, you know, previous schooling before you apply to the program, typically the applicants that we receive will have majors in psychology or education. It's not to say that everyone that applies has a major in that area, but it certainly you know, provides a good foundation for the things that we are going to be working on within the program. But in terms of the mandatory prerequisites, at least 12 credit hours in psychology, which includes an experimental psychology course, as well as a stats or quantitative methods course. We find that really gives a good foundation for some of these things that we're gonna work on together. In terms of some things that are beneficial to do outside of that coursework, really, you know, gaining as much experience as you can. And obviously we don't expect you all to apply to our program in particular and have this, you know, years and years of time in the classroom, in the school setting. But any opportunities that you can have to talk to school psychologists, to you know, engage with children and families, you know, and that can be as you know, widespread as just babysitting, you know, spending time with you know, neighbors who are younger, just getting to know you know, what is life like for the children and adolescents that we may work with. Obviously we all have our own experiences, but it's certainly different, you know, being on this side of things. And certainly any sort of research opportunities that exist at your current universities can be really, really helpful, you know, in terms of, you know, one, setting you apart on your application, but also just giving you more experience to start to hone in on what does really interest you. And I think all of these things, you know, give you good perspective onto whether or not this will be the right fit for you. And, you know, I know as Dave and Ben mentioned earlier, the CAS will line you up to be a school psychologist in a school. PsyD, you have a little bit more flexibility at that point, but, you know, of course it is important if you're going to sink the time and money into graduate school that you're, you know, confident that it is the right fit for you based on your needs. some tips for applying to programs in general, but also for our program. Read and reread all the website information. Take a look at the prerequisites. Are there things that need to be completed before you apply to be considered for enrollment? What are those required components of the application? And I think Dave and Ben did a great job, in particular, outlining a lot of the specifics about our program, but I think that those types of philosophies and those statements on what programs are going to teach you all when you apply to them should be readily available. They should either be read in the website or a part of some documentation that can come right from those websites. So those are certainly good things to familiarize yourselves with. First and foremost, to make sure that the program is a good fit for you. I think today we're outlining all the different pieces of UAlbany's program, but there's a lot of other programs whose theoretical orientations are going to be different, whose approaches to, teaching all the different components of being a school psychologist are going to be different, and some may be better or worse fits for you. So it's important to consider all of those different factors that go into that program with your own personal needs and your own personal interests in the field. So some things to think about. I mentioned this a little bit, the program offerings and the nature of the program requirements. Again, every program is going to look a little bit different. For our purposes at UAlbany, we have the CAS and the PsyD degrees. Some programs will offer PhDs. That's I went to the University of Connecticut, and we had a PhD program with that specialization in school psychology. There's a lot of overlap. There's some subtle differences, largely related to focus on research versus clinically based experience. But every program is going to design that differently. So, for example, within our program, our clinical experience in schools and agencies is extensive. You're going to get a lot of hands-on training, and every school is going to have certain requirements with that, but a lot of schools that you're going to look at may have requirements that are less so than what we would have. And obviously we think that's very beneficial and sets you up very well for life after graduate school, but certainly depends on your interests and how you envision yourself using a degree like this. There's some other things to think about: quality of the faculty, areas of interest. Ben mentioned, in terms of research interests within our program, and between the four of us, are different areas of expertise and specialization. We cover a pretty broad portion of the field here. And there certainly is some flexibility between, if you go the PsyD route and you start thinking about dissertation, you want to find somebody who has a good understanding and some level of interest in what you're interested in. So certainly something to think about before signing on to get into a PsyD program in that capacity. And of course, the cost of the program, the availability of assistantships and things like that, which is going to be different everywhere that you go. Currently, we have a very high rate of assistantships within the program, particularly for our PsyD students. And I know we talked earlier about payment for internships, which a lot of programs will not guarantee, and in many cases, you won't be paid for that full year experience. So those things will certainly come into play and are good to think about now, rather than to get into the program and then realize halfway through, oh, I have this full year where I'm not going to be paid anything. Other things to think about: location of campus, especially when we think about field training opportunities. Dave touched on, in our area, there's a lot of opportunities for some diverse experiences, whether that be in city, in rural settings and suburban settings. We provide a lot of opportunities so that by the time you finish the program and you get out and you're looking for jobs, you're going to be prepared regardless of which direction you want to go. And you're going to have experience at varying levels. You're going to have experience in varying districts that are going to have different philosophies and approaches to things. But it is important to think about the location of the campus. If you enroll in a program that is very rurally situated, you can envision your experiences are going to be pretty rurally situated. So in a place like at a place like UAlbany, we can provide all those different experiences within reason. You're not going to have to drive, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to your site. Everything is relatively close, and you're still going to get that breadth of experience here. And it's also can be good to look at special admissions procedures and opportunities available for members from diverse backgrounds. So in terms of UAlbany, the graduate school website provides a lot of good information on some of those opportunities, as well as some contact information if you'd like to learn more about that. In terms of the materials that you are going to be submitting, we know the application process can be a bear sometimes. There's a lot that goes into it. But the thing that is really, really important when you go through that is proofreading, editing every single piece of that, reading and rereading. And I know a lot of time goes into that, but those are things that are really important and are going to give you the best opportunity to get into any and all programs that you apply to. And, in terms of articulating yourself and expressing your interest in the program, I'll speak specifically on our end. We want to know why you want to come here. Obviously, everyone at this meeting has some interest in school psychology. Every applicant that we get has an interest in getting that degree, but we want to know why you want to come here and work with all of us. So being able to specifically articulate that of why you're applying to a specific program can go a long way toward helping you work into a position to get an interview and ultimately to gain enrollment into that program. In terms of the communication beforehand, we all receive a lot of emails from prospective applicants. This is why it's important to carefully review information available on all those program websites. There's a lot of things that can be answered by looking at those things. Certainly, if there's something you identify, you have a question about that isn't a part of that, we're happy to answer those emails and touch base with you. But we want to make sure we're checking all those boxes beforehand and ensuring that the things that we're seeking more information about, that there isn't already more information on the website and in those handbooks and things like that. And in terms of those email correspondences, again, we're all happy to touch base with you, as you go through this process. But it is good to keep in mind that, those correspondences, whether it's, here at our program or in other programs, typically play no role in admission outcomes. Certainly we won't reduce any sort of bias and things like that in that process. So we're happy to answer those questions, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee how the situation is going to play out as we go through the enrollment process. In terms of application to our program, we have a minimum GPA requirement of 3.0. We typically accept 4 to 5 PsyD students a year and 10 to 12 CAS students. And in terms of funding availability, again, our PsyD students, we have a long history of a majority of our students having that funding and some level of financial support. On the CAS end, our internships are up until this point, and I know David mentioned, certainly can't make any guarantees forever, but currently, and it is certainly our intention for that to continue, that all our internships are going to be funded, and we also have opportunities for those assistantships on the CAS end, and those are very competitive, but the opportunities are still there. Okay, for more information specific to our program, we have the link here, which has a lot of that information that Ben and Dave went over, but you can certainly explore more and get to know more about our program a little bit more about our backgrounds if there's any interest there. And in terms of general information about careers in school psychology, APA and NASP Online are both great resources that are going to provide a lot more understanding of all the programs that are out there and things like that.
Okay, so we're right at time here. So if you can stick around for an extra minute or so, I'm gonna just go through some. These are some of the questions that were asked through the registration. and then we'll leave an open time for questions. Some of the questions that were submitted, I believe, were addressed through the presentation. Our faculty, I know Ben mentioned a little bit about his research areas. Dave, do you want to say a few sentences about what your research is in?
Just very quickly, my research is focused mostly right now on issues in school-based suicide prevention. I've got a few studies that's starting up in that area, but also looking at aspects of child and adolescent internalizing disorders. Internalizing disorders are disorders characterized by subjective distress, like suicidal behavior, depression, and anxiety. And I've also got a couple things in progress looking at murder-suicide in educational settings. We talk a lot about school shooters for good reason, but it's surprising how many of those school shooters are also suicidal or who die by suicide. So that's pretty much my focus.
Thanks, Dave. So there was a question about, do CAS students take classes with sighted students? The answer is yes. The majority of classes are taken with the entire cohort, which is what we refer to the whole group. So there are some classes that sighted students take that CAS students do not take, and that primarily occurs after or when the CAS students are in their third year internship and sighted students are continuing to take coursework. Sighted funding, Andrew mentioned this a little bit. I think this year funding was around $9,500. There is an assistantship associated, and we would give information about what the responsibilities were for that internship at the time of admission. And there is also some credits offered, and that usually hovers around 15 for the entire year. Housing, that's a great question. When we do interviews, we also have opportunities for folks who are interviewing to talk to current students. They are really the best folks to be talking about where they go for housing. Majority of our students are off campus. We have had a couple that have secured housing on campus, but the Albany area really has very affordable housing. And our students are typically pretty gracious with extending information about how to secure housing if you're particularly from out of area. Practical experience provided. There was some, I believe, information about that, but if there's more questions, we'll leave space at the end if there's more specific information that's desired. How long does it take to receive information regarding an offer? We do have interviews, and the time after depends. We typically want to get back to folks as soon as possible within a couple weeks. We know folks are anxiously waiting, but we can't provide an exact time frame. And then what time are classes typically offered? So our classes are typically offered, I think the earliest is 11:30. We have classes that start at 12. We have classes that start at 3. And then we have classes that start in the evening, 4:30 or 6. So it's typically afternoon to evening, and no classes on Fridays. And so that's something that, there's Fridays are days when we don't have classes at the university. And then there's certainly space. I mean, students are doing field placements. So for example, for practicum, which is in second year, those students don't have classes on Wednesdays or Fridays because we know they're out on placement. All right. Other questions? And I did share the PowerPoint in chat, so feel free to take that, download it, refer to it. Any questions? Should I include babysitting on my CV? I think I'm going to answer with a probably unhelpful. It depends. I think, for example, the length of time that you were engaged in that work, and also the types of activities that you did. You know, if it was, for example, over the summer and you were spending a good amount of time with this kiddos, and you were able to take away key skills and you were able to highlight those experiences couched within skills that are applicable to school psychology, I think that could be valuable information. But I'm wondering what other faculty think.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know I did mention that, just in terms of those experiences that certainly can be helpful, but I would agree with that, Callan. If there is some, if you can tie it to some of the things that we're going to be working on in the program, I think it certainly, can be relevant to sort of open those doors. And, I imagine it certainly increases your comfortability working with school age students.
Thanks, Andrew. Dave?
I'd agree with what Andrew said, what you've said.
All right, thanks, Georgia. Emily, are there salary differences for CAS and PsyD? So in schools, there are sometimes salary increases or pay bumps if you, depending on how many credits you've attained in your graduate programming. So that can yield a different salary in school systems. And then there's also with a doctoral level, there's the ability to supplement salary. If you're doing private practice and working in a school, for example, then you're able to make more money, have a higher salary just with that supplemental income. And then there's a big range, in terms of other areas of practice. I worked for the Office of Mental Health for a period of time, which paid very well. But then there are other areas of practice where the pay may not be as good as school. So I think there's a big range even at the doctoral level where, how much money you can make in certain positions. But any faculty have a different sense of that?
I think that's right. It's a complicated question to answer because it depends on the geographic area of your country. Most school psychology positions will pay more, not necessarily for a doctoral degree, but for more credits, but it often isn't substantially more. I know when I worked in the Binghamton City School District as a school psychologist, I had my CAS and not my doctorate. If I had my doctorate at that time, I would have made $300 more a year. Which is obviously some school districts in affluent areas. And by that, I mean, Long Island, affluent school districts near major cities will sometimes pay more and specifically want a doctoral level school psychologist, and they will pay more for it. But you'll also have a much higher cost of living in those areas too. So it really depends. Most school psychologists, I think, who work in public schools, where most of our graduates work, obviously, and where most school psychologists work, doctoral level school psychologists probably on average don't make a whole lot more than CAS level school psychologists. The differences are minimal. The main opportunity may be with a doctor who you can supplement your income, as Callan mentioned.
Thanks, Dave. Is it common for undergraduates to directly get into the PsyD? I would say most of our students who matriculate are coming directly from their undergraduates. I don't have an exact percentage, but we certainly have folks who have taken a gap year or two and have accrued experience that's related, which can certainly be very beneficial. So any other thoughts on that from other faculty?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of students that come from undergrad, and I don't know about everybody's background here. I came from undergrad right into my program. So, it certainly is a commonality, and we have a lot of current students that took that route.
Yeah. I know I took a year. Ben, is that when you were a farmer?
Yeah, during undergraduate. To pay college bills, I worked as a cattle farmer all through college and then the summer after.
Fun fact about Ben.
Yeah.
All right, is an experimental psychology course a requirement? My school does not offer that specific course. We do look for that as a prerequisite. I wouldn't say that it would mean that it would prevent you from being accepted, but we would look at your other courses, and if it's something that you may need to get that course prior to matriculating in our program, but we would provide you with that information, should you gain acceptance. So I don't think it would be something to worry about at that time if it's not offered at your university, but we would give you that information should it be required before you come. Is the master's thesis that students complete during the PsyD program related to their dissertation? Not always. It's actually a master's project, which is completed during one course. So it's completed in a semester. And I don't know I can't say kind of percentage wise in terms of how often that's related to dissertation, but I would say maybe roughly 50%. It certainly does not need to be, though if you are able to pursue an area of interest, then it helps with solidifying that for your dissertation and gaining some experience with doing a literature review in that area. I think that was it. You're welcome, Shelby. You're welcome, Sarah. Any other questions? Should I be concerned if a graduate program offers a master's without a CAS? Yes. I would say.
You won't be able to work in a school.
Yeah,
If it's a school psychology program. There's
My
certainly
guess-
other master's degrees where you're not going to get that, but to work in a school, you will need them.
Yeah, that's very typical though.
that they don't offer a CAS?
That they'd offer a master's but not a CAS. If it's in New York.
That's typical or atypical?
Very atypical.
Atypical.
Right.
I'm
Like
not even sure
Marist.
that-
Marist
I'm not even
offers a
sure-
certificate.
Right.
Right.
So, Shelby, I think, so,
Yeah,
so
Marist-
what part of it might be, and I don't know if this is the case, but certainly we know folks at Marist, the program director was a graduate for this program and it does have a certificate. So part of maybe the confusing piece is that in order for New York State to be a certified school psychologist, you actually have to have a master's before you get your certificate. So our program, we don't mention it because it kind of happens along the way. You get your master's in educational psychology and methodology and your certificate of advanced study in school psychology. So a lot of times you may see it marketed as, your master's in school psychology, but you would get that and then you would complete coursework to obtain your certificate of advanced study or whatever the designation is in that school. So it would be highly atypical if there was no CAS or CAGS or EDS. And like Andrew said, that would mean that you are not able to practice as a school psychologist. I also know we've had folks previously apply to our master's in educational psychology and methodology program under the assumption that they could practice as a school psychologist with that degree. And they've unfortunately found that they were in the wrong program to reach the career goal that they had intended to reach and had to apply to our program. So I would take another look at that, Shelby, and hopefully that information helped. You're welcome, Tyler. Glad it's been helpful. Any other questions? You're welcome. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Glad it was helpful. Look forward to your applications.
Have a great night, everyone.